Okay. You want me to say something nice about this movie? I'll say something nice. The action was better than it was in the first one. Still nothing to write home about, but better. Carnage looks good, and the symbiotes are different colors this time, so you could actually tell them apart, which was helpful. And Woody Harrelson's wig is less terrible than it was in the first movie. Still a bad wig, but he didn't look like Ronald McDonald anymore. And that's it. That's pretty much every good thing I have to say about Venom Let There Be Carnage. Now as for the rest of it, movies like this irritate me in a way that's very difficult to put into words. Because when a movie like this, based on such great source material, stories and characters and comics I loved as a kid, somehow manages to get almost every single thing wrong in their infuriating campaign to sodomize the Spider-Man IP raw in the name of a transparent cash grab, only to be rewarded for this with the promise of more movies to come and a seat at the cool table, spoilers for the end credit stinger, I start thinking back to the days when I was always excited to go to the movies. When I didn't walk into the theater filled with dread that something I wanted to enjoy, something that could have been great if it were made by the people it should have been made by in the first place, was about to spend the next 90 minutes pointing at me and laughing just so I could walk out of the theater wishing for nothing more than my 90 minutes and my $10 back. If this channel wasn't what pays my rent, on a good month at least, I would have just stayed home and spared myself the aggravation. But it is, so I couldn't. And since this piece of crap movie I just watched has me aggravated AF right now, please allow me to relieve my mounting stress the only way I can. Practically everything in this movie feels painfully awkward to me, and I'm not sure what the main culprit is, but so much of it seems to stem from the movie having so many bad ideas that it thinks are great, constantly shooting itself in the foot at every turn and trying to be so much while actually being so little due to its complete inability to pick a f***ing lane. This thing is simultaneously trying to be an action movie, a horror movie, a comedy, a romance, a buddy cop something or other, and God knows what else, all wrapped up in a teen-friendly PG-13 package, because God forbid a movie with a villain named Carnage have a rating that reflects that. It tries to be so many different things all at the same time, and fails at pretty much all of them. And it's hard to know what the movie gets tripped up on the most, but I think I'll start with the characters, because that's what's gonna segue me into everything else. Let's begin with Shriek. This is Shriek in the comics. And this is Shriek in the movie. You can probably tell what went wrong here. And believe it or not, I'm not even talking about the race bending, although that didn't help, because a big part of what makes Shriek stand out is her distinctive look, which the movie completely ignores. In fact, they seem to intentionally go in the complete opposite direction with that. And the aesthetics are just the tip of the iceberg. On top of not looking like she's supposed to look, her powers are different, her backstory is different, the relationship with Carnage is there, but they changed that a lot too. All told, Shriek feels like a completely different character from the comics. The only real similarity she has is the name Frances Barrison. Oh, and they do call her Shriek in one scene, I think. But it's totally random, and then we just know her as Frances for the rest of the movie. It's very strange. And to be honest, for a lot of this, I wasn't even sure what she was doing in the movie. Shriek was a main player in the Maximum Carnage arc back in the 90s, and she's made assorted other appearances in the comics over the years, but outside of that, she's not really that big of a character. And since they seem to have very little interest in getting her character right, why even put her in there in the first place? Well, apparently, they put her in there to humanize Carnage. There are all sorts of things wrong with that statement. Look, Carnage as a villain should be pretty hard to screw up, because, let's face it, as a character, he's not really that deep. He's a brutal, sadistic killing machine who sees murder as an expression of free will. If you can get that much right with him, you should be in good shape. And they didn't. Though he's definitely brutal and kills people, even though they PG-13 the crap out of him, but as a character, Just like with Shriek, it's as if they went out of their way to change things about him. They added all this different stuff, they changed his motivation, I guess they thought they were fleshing his character out, but really all they did was make him a lot more generic. And the stuff with Shriek leans into that a lot. The movie really plays this relationship up, because now these two are actually in love. It's twisted and f***ed up, and Carnage is still very much a killer who does horrible things, but he loves this chick, which I guess the movie does, among other things, to make Cletus Cassidy more tragic or relatable or something. They even try to make us feel bad for him 1 or 2 times. And my god, if there's one character in the Spider-Man Rogues Gallery you don't need to do that with, it's this one. Cassidy/Carnage isn't somebody you should feel bad for, and he isn't a character who should have genuine loving feelings for anyone. He's the monster. He's Venom's dark reflection. Carnage is to Venom what Venom is to Spider-Man. That's why Venom hated him in the comics, at least in the comics I read, and none of that is in here. All the nuance is gone, they made all these changes to him, and now Cassidy just feels like a generic serial killer with superpowers. And even his powers are different. They give him a bunch of brand new random-ass powers that he just pulls out of his butt. Now the Carnage symbiote can create tornadoes and hack computer systems. Both abilities he uses exactly 1 time to advance the plot, and then they never come up again. So yeah, doing a faithful portrayal of any of the characters was definitely not a priority to these people. But you know the really ironic thing? Despite the movie doing a lot of weird, inexplicable stuff with Carnage and Shriek, despite the changes made to the characters, despite Woody Harrelson and Naomi Harris both being miscast in my opinion, they're the 2 best things in the movie. Low bar, yes, but points for effort. Because these are 2 really talented, accomplished actors trying hard to make something of the material, even if the material is f***ed up. They're the most tolerable things here, and actually come close to salvaging a number of scenes just with their natural charisma. I don't agree with what the movie does with their characters, but they're just about the only people in this thing who hold on to their dignity, and they're certainly more memorable bad guys than what's-his-name from the first movie. At least they make an impression. Which is more than I can say for poor Michelle Williams, who is still there, for what reason I don't know. Her role here as Eddie's ex is as thankless as it was in the first movie. So, once again, she completely phones it in. The scenes with her character and Eddie are so awkward I almost felt embarrassed for her. But they kept the character around because there's this subplot about Eddie being jealous of Anne's new relationship and still wanting her back. God knows why they couldn't have less chemistry if they tried, which is all in service of Eddie finally recognizing his real true love, the Venom symbiote. I'll get to it. Have I mentioned how much I can't fucking stand the Venom symbiote in this movie? Every second it's on screen is nails on a freaking chalkboard. They make this thing so overbearing, so grating, so eye-gougingly obnoxious, there is not one scene that isn't ruined by its mere presence. They try to do a dramatic scene, but it's ruined because Venom keeps talking about how Eddie's a loser. They try to do an emotional scene, ruined because Venom keeps complaining about how he wants to eat people. They try to do a suspenseful scene, ruined because Venom keeps bitching about how Anne's new fiancé sucks, and so on and so on. At every single turn, every time the movie tries to do something, anything to make you give one single crap about what's going on, it's completely, utterly undermined because Venom just will not shut the f*** up! I cannot remember any character in any movie I've seen in years that was this fucking irritating. And what boggles my mind even more is that they managed to do all this while not bothering to give us a single reason why we should actually root for this little shit. At any given moment, the Venom symbiote is this close to literally biting the head off anyone who even looks at him sideways, which includes innocent people, by the way. In the climax, he wants to run away from Carnage because Carnage is red, and only decides to stay and fight because Eddie promises to let Venom eat as many human beings as he wants if he does. how on earth is this a character we're supposed to get behind? And the bitch of it is, I'm pretty sure they wrote the symbiote this way because they thought it would be funny. Holy shit, is it not funny? Maybe the idea was to annoy Eddie because Eddie being annoyed is where the humor would come from. But the problem with that is it pretty much depends on Eddie being a funny character. And he isn't. Which brings me to Tom Hardy. 2 movies in, and I still have no goddamn clue what he's going for here. But out of everyone in the cast, he's the biggest victim of this script. Because some fucking idiot at Sony, I'm looking at you, Amy Pascal, made the call that on top of everything else this movie was trying and failing at, Venom needed to be a dark comedy. A dark buddy comedy. But what they somehow failed to realize is that Tom Hardy is not a fucking comedian. He might be a good dramatic actor, but the guy ain't funny. Which means you have an unfunny actor trying to sell painfully unfunny jokes written for 2 people with a scene partner who is entirely CG. And it all goes over like a fart in church! I've been to funerals that got more laughs than this shit! For the life of me, I don't understand what possessed them to write the character this way. Yeah, in the comics, Venom would occasionally break out some bits of very dark humor, but there was a charm and a subtlety to it. But subtle is not in this movie's vocabulary. So instead, the writers decided to go the Saturday Night Live route by turning Eddie and the symbiote into the fucking Odd Couple and laying on lots and lots of gay undertones. Oh yeah. That. As if there wasn't enough about these characters the movie gets wrong, Eddie and the symbiote's entire dynamic is now a thinly veiled metaphor for a gay romance. They bicker like a couple, and basically treats them like a couple. At one point they're having a fight, and Venom even says that he's, quote, out of the Eddie Brock closet. Subtlety is dead. It's like they deliberately threw out anything that might have been interesting or complex or compelling about the dynamic between Eddie and the symbiote, not that there was any of that in the first movie, and just turned it into something cheap and pandering and political for the sake of a few laughs that it doesn't even get. And I'm not even surprised at this point either, because what else would they do? Write something that's smart? Puh! Fat chance. There is no intelligence to be found here. In fact, big chunks of the movie are astoundingly dumb. Minor spoilers incoming. For example, the movie begins with a scene in a mental asylum where Shriek is telling Cletus how she's being transferred to a different facility because her powers are mutating or something. Which means that the staff knows that she has powers. But then, when they transfer her, they do absolutely nothing to prevent her from using her powers. They don't gag her or muzzle her or anything. They just toss on the handcuffs and throw her in a van with one guard so she can easily just sonic scream his ass and try to escape. Seriously? These idiots didn't see that coming? And that's not even the stupidest part. The stupidest part of the movie comes later, when Carnage burns down a building. The whole thing is ablaze, fire everywhere. Cletus is just casually walking around amongst the fire, totally fine, not a care in the world. In the very next scene, Anne points out to another character that fire can kill the symbiotes. What the hell happened here? Were they rewriting the script on the fly? Was the editor asleep at the wheel? Did the movie makers just not give a shit? I have no idea, but these edits are shockingly bad. How these things even made it into the script in the first place, much less the final product, is a fucking mystery. Now, I've mentioned this a couple times, so I guess I should talk about the rating. I don't believe that a movie necessarily needs an R rating to be scary or visceral or whatever. The Dark Knight was PG-13 and the Joker was still scary, so there are ways to do that without having tons of gore and F-bombs and stuff, if you're smart about it. So I don't think you absolutely need an R rating for Carnage to be frightening. But Carnage does need to be who he is. And when you have a villain like this, whose whole character, whole identity is about him being brutal and sadistic and disturbingly violent, to kneecap that character with a PG-13 rating just so you can get more young teens in the theater is just so Hollywood. And sure, Carnage is still violent, he still kills people, but it's all very sanitized. There's very little, if any, blood, and in a lot of cases, when he's killing someone, the murder happens off-screen or behind something, so you can't actually see it. Hell, the most disturbing kill he does in the whole movie is in the trailer, and it's kind of baffling that the filmmakers seem to take some cues from the Maximum Carnage arc, a story where Carnage goes on a huge citywide mass murder spree and racks up an enormous body count, considering how defanged he is in this movie. It's like they didn't want to go as dark as he is in the comics, so they felt like they had to add all this other stuff to him to compensate, which if anything pulled him in the opposite direction. And the kicker is that when Cassidy gets the symbiote, it is pretty decently realized. So when Carnage is actually being Carnage, those are the scenes that are kind of diverting because it's the character doing what he does in the comics, f***ing shit up and causing chaos. That's when the movie comes the closest to working, when they're allowing the character to be what he is, minus the making tornadoes thing. But God forbid we follow the comics too closely, so they have to take a bunch of liberties with him too, and none of that feels really true to the character at all. And when this character is the biggest selling point of the movie, alongside Venom, who is aggressively the worst thing in it, this whole thing just feels like a colossal misfire. Venom Let There Be Carnage is a mess. It tries to be so many different things: comedy, horror, buddy cop, romance, all at the same time, and none of it works. One thing prevents another from working, and it all just gets muddled together. The humor falls flatter than a pancake run over by a steamroller. The action is passable, but with all that other stuff working against it, I really couldn't have cared less. The villains at least make an impression thanks to the efforts of the actors, but that's really despite the movie's best efforts to screw the villains up. There are several bafflingly bad edits, including one very out-of-place animated green screen sequence that sticks out like a sore thumb and accomplishes nothing but being awkward as hell. Their attempts to tug on our heartstrings at the end come off downright laughable because of all the tonal inconsistencies and the haphazard way the characters are written. The hero of the movie is the most loathsome, unlikable shit stain in the entire thing. Hell, I thought the Carnage symbiote was more likable than Venom because at least the Carnage symbiote didn't talk that much. The runtime is just 90 minutes and change, but feels like 3 hours, and the end credits stinger made me so angry I wanted to burn the theater down on my way out the door. This movie. My head hurts. Is Dune coming out soon? I really need to watch something good after this one. Let's get out of here. If you liked or hated this video or this movie, let me know in the comments. Ding the bell icon and follow my social media so you'll always know when I upload new stuff. I also have a live streaming channel, all the links are down there. And most importantly, don't forget to thumbs up the video, share, subscribe, and make sure you're still subscribed, because what really deserves to have its head bitten off by a ravenous alien piece of shit is the YouTube algorithm. Thanks so much for watching. That's all for now, but I'll be back with more very soon. So stay tuned for that, do all the YouTube things, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace out.